I've been playing around with this project for about 4 years now, ever since I got my milling machine. The main reason I started it was to learn more about my milling machine and all the different things that I can do with it. And I've always been amazed at all the different designs that people come up with making these whirligigs. But I've never seen anybody do a Gatling gun. I'd work on it off and on and then set it off to the side and do other projects. I finally finished it, and it's taken some time going through 4 years worth of videos. So this is how I made it, and it's probably going to be a 2-part video. I sacrificed an old wind chime to get the tubes for the barrels. This is a piece of 1/4-inch aluminum plate. It's going to have 6 barrels, so I need to make 2 retainers for the barrels. I marked off the center of the workpiece, and I'm going to use the DRO and the milling machine to do the hole pattern. The first thing I did was set the X and Y axis on the DRO to 0. Next I selected the hole pattern function on the DRO. The center position is already 0, so I go to the next function. The diameter is going to be 2 inches. The starting position is going to be 0 degrees, and the ending is going to be 300 degrees. The number of holes is going to be 6. So now it's telling me to go to position 1. So from here on out, for each hole number, I just have to make sure the X and Y axis is set on 0 and drill my hole. So for hole number 2, I just do the same thing. I adjust the X and Y axis on the milling machine until the DRO goes back to 0 on both X and Y, and then drill my next hole. I just repeat this process all the way around until I get all 6 holes drilled. I'm really just marking the holes right now with the center drill just to make sure that I have all my hole patterns right before I actually bore the holes. The DRO remembers all of my settings, so when I get ready to bore the holes, I just go back to position number 1 and then work my way around till I get all 6 holes bored. Now I refer back to the DRO to go back to my original center point and drill a hole for the axle housing. I trimmed off the sharp corners with the bandsaw, and now I'm going to round off the square to make it into a circle. I made an arbor to put the workpiece in so I could mount it in the lathe. The oversized washer makes it look like it's not running true, but it is running true. I'm using the old South Bend 9A lathe. This was all done before I purchased the Precision Matthews lathe. When I got the workpiece turned down to the right diameter, I set the cross slide DRO on 0. So now when I do the second workpiece, I'll be able to turn it to the same diameter. I'll just keep working my way down until I get to 0. Now I'm making the axle housing to go between the two barrel retainers. The axle is going to be 1/4 inch in diameter stainless steel. I'm drilling a 3/8 hole. That will give me plenty of clearance for the axle. I also ordered oil-embedded bronze flange bearings that are 3/8 outer diameter and 1/4 inch inner diameter. Next, I need to drill holes for set screws to hold the barrel retainer onto the axle housing. I'm going to use 2 set screws. I'm going to put the first one here and the second one at 180 degrees on the opposite side. I'm using the edge finder and the DRO to find the center of the workpiece. I'm using 632 stainless steel set screws, so the drill size is 7/64. Once I drill all the way through, I'm going to step the drill bit up about 3 sizes and drill down about 3/4 of the distance from the top. That way I don't have to thread the entire workpiece for the set screw. Now I can run the tap down to the point where I need to start threading. Now I need to put a set screw at each hole location for the barrel tubes to hold them in place. These are going to be number 440 stainless steel set screws. So I'm using a 3/32 drill for the tap size. Now I'm going to polish them up in the vapor hone cabinet. I'm using extra fine glass beads. My first thought was to twist the two barrel retainers to give all the barrels kind of an angle and see if the air blowing through them would make it spin. I tried that and put it in front of a fan, but it would take hurricane force winds to make that work. So I'm going to end up having to put a propeller on it. So I'm using 1/16 inch thick aluminum plate to make the propellers. I'm going to make 6 blades to match the tubes. I clamped all 6 together and used the belt sander to round off all the corners. Now I need to make a hub to attach the blades. The hole in the center needs to be big enough so it doesn't interfere with the bronze bushing. I mounted the dividing head on my milling machine and set it to a 45-degree angle. The saw blade just happens to be a 1/16 of an inch thick, so it's perfect for the blades. So after each cut, I'll rotate the indexer 60 degrees until I get all 6 cuts for the blades. Next I used a 1/8 inch end mill to cut a pocket so I can put set screws to hold each propeller blade in place. So these will also be number 440 stainless steel set screws. So I used a 3/32 drill bit for the tap size. It was a little bit time consuming because I had to come back behind this tap with a bottom tap to tap the hole all the way down. In order to tighten the set screw on the last blade, I had to drill a hole through the next blade so I would be able to put an Allen wrench through the blade and into the set screw for the other blade, if that makes sense. Now that I'm done with all the detail work on the hub, I can part it off. Now with the barrel tube retainer centered up on the hub, I can drill mounting holes for the hub. I'm going to do 2 mounting screws. Now we'll see how it works. It looks like it's going to work, but now with the propeller on there, I think I want to make the tubes longer for appearance. So here it is with longer tubes. This is with the fan on high, so now I think I need bigger blades. That's better, and the fan is on low. Thought I'd try it outside just to make sure. Now I think I want to move the barrel retainer out closer to the end of the tubes to replicate more like what a Gatling gun would look like. That means I'm going to have to make a longer axle housing. I'm going to have to punch the bushings out of this old housing so I can use them in the new one. I grabbed a piece of aluminum out of my aluminum stock to make the new housing, so I just need to size it up. My 3/8 drill bit is long enough to go all the way through, so I'll have to turn it around and get it from the other side. The first portion of this cut is going to be for a locking collar for the 1/4 inch stainless steel shaft that I'm using for the axle. And this cut will be for the barrel tube retainer. Because the locking collar has to fit the 1/4 inch stainless steel shaft, I'm going to drill all the way through with a 1/4 inch drill bit. Now I can cut off the locking collar. Now that I've parted off the locking collar, I can finish the hole out with a 3/8 drill bit. Now I can put the bronze bushings back in the new axle housing. Now I need to put a set screw in the locking collar for the 1/4 inch axle. Well, if you weren't bored and watched all of part 1, stay tuned for part 2.